Hello, fantasy football fans. Welcome to the 9 Route, the fantasy football show that goes deep to help you win. I'm your host, Austin Lee, and I'm joined as always by fellow Football Guys writer, Alex Miglio. How you doing, Alex?
Doing great. Got my new setup here. I have this excellent microphone that I'm trying to keep out of the shot. And it's a funny story. I won this microphone, actually. It's a Neumann TLM-103 microphone. And
That sounds fancy. I don't know anything about microphones, but with all those letters and numbers, it just makes it sound cool.
None of that means anything to any of you, but I was in the Audio Engineering Society back in my heyday, and I won a student recording competition with an album that I recorded, and I won this microphone. So now you get to hear my voice in all its sultry goodness.
Ooh, I like it. I purchased my lav mic off Amazon for $18. You might hear a disparity in our audio quality, but hopefully our fantasy content.
You know what? You're beating me. You're beating me on Fantasy Pros as usual, so I have to beat you somewhere.
Yes, you totally got me in the audio quality department. You are the winner. I will never beat you in that. So, Alex, today's show we're gonna talk about the fantasy impact of Injury-pocalypse from week 2, and as well as all the drama in the NFL. We'll cover the fantasy side of that. We'll talk about some polarizing players in our rankings, like Toby Gerhart, Percy Harvin, and Pierre Garçon, as well as talk about some of our picks of the week at DraftKings and FanDuel. And then we'll hit a couple of questions at the end from our listeners who used the hashtag 9Route. That's the digit 9 route. And so we'll get to those at the end. We appreciate you sending in your questions. And thank you for your support. We've got our website up and going, the9route.com. You can find us on iTunes and Stitcher and Google Plus and YouTube and Facebook and Friendster and
Friendster,
not really Friendster.
That's our main source of business, Friendster.
I actually signed up for a Pinterest page. I've never used Pinterest, but
he's not joking about that.
I'm actually serious. I have no idea, but why not? Hey, so you can catch all of that on the9route.com.
You know what? The 9route.com is pretty snazzy. I have to hand it to you and your buddy at work who helped out, but it is pretty cool. You can just check it out.
Thanks. Yes, I'm very excited about it. I'm super excited about it. So thank you for all the positive feedback. Please give us your ratings and your thumbs up and your plus ones and whatever you can to help us out. We're trying to get our name out there. So thanks for listening, and we appreciate all you valuable listeners out there. So, dude, let's talk about some of the crazy news this week. It's been one of the wildest weeks in the NFL that I can remember in a while. And we'll kick it off with talking about the Vikings backfield a little bit. People are pretty familiar with sort of the drama that's gone on with Adrian Peterson. Maybe we'll talk about what the fantasy fallout is of some of that going forward. What do you think, Alex?
Well, it's unfortunate, the whole situation. And, it looked like Adrian Peterson was coming back this week, and then things, I don't want to comment on any of that. But it looks like going forward, for now, Matt Asiata is the guy. And I like Jerick McKinnon, but I'm getting a lot of sense from the people who follow the Vikings closely, the fantasy guys who follow the Vikings closely, that he's not going to be a big part of this offense, at least anytime soon. And we saw that last week. Asiata got most of the work. He got the touchdown. He didn't look great. He averaged like 2.8 yards per carry, but he got the workload, and I think that's half the battle. So he's the guy to own. If you haven't gotten to him, he's gone probably, but I would hang on to him. However, with Peterson, I don't know what's going to happen with him. I mean, it seems like he's gone for the year, but anything could happen. We've seen insane amounts of craziness in the first couple weeks already off the field. So who knows? Maybe he'll be back next week. So just I would not cut him unless you have a short bench or you really need help. Just hang on to him for now.
Yeah, I think the only way Peterson makes it back this year is if somehow he enters, a plea with the prosecution. And I don't think the prosecution has any sort of motivation to give him a favorable plea right now. They sort of have the control in this situation right now. So I would not expect Peterson back this year. And if he does, it would be like a plea, maybe a suspension on top of that. It could get messy. Like I wouldn't count on him at all. And I think that gives a lot of value to Asiata, for the rest of the season. I would say he's kind of like a low-end RB2, kind of what I thought Toby Gerhardt might have been this year if he had stayed healthy and Jacksonville didn't look especially terrible. Yeah, I think we're not going to see Peterson this season. I wouldn't count on it. You could keep it on a long bench, but I wouldn't do that. How about Dwyer, Jonathan Dwyer? New news out that he is missing this week. He was caught up in a domestic abuse situation as well, and so this could really raise the value of Stephon Taylor as well as Andre Ellington. So I'm wondering if Andre Ellington gets the biggest boost here, or if Stephon Taylor does. I would say Taylor is the guy who's going to kind of sort of step into the Dwyer role, but I don't see a whole lot of value for him in the Cardinals' backfield that I'm rushing out to go and get him on this news about Jonathan Dwyer. What do you think, Alex? Do you think that Stephon Taylor is worth getting?
Well, you'll recall in Week 1 when Andre Ellington was iffy, there was a lot of people high on Dwyer because of that, but he wound up splitting time with Taylor in that backfield behind Ellington, and he wound up getting the touchdown that week on the drive where he caught a couple passes. So I think he gets a big boost because it seems like he's going to be the goal line guy now, unless they move Ellington to that position. I was seeing Evan Silva of RotoWorld tweet about it today, talking about how he expects Taylor to be the goal line back, and I agree with him. I think that he gets the biggest boost. However, I think Ellington does get a boost as well because that's just less competition for touches. So I think Taylor's going to probably see a good 10 or 12 touches going forward, which gives him a lot of value.
Yeah, I could see him as maybe being like a low-end flex play, but obviously with Ellington's injury situation, it could become more than that if Ellington can't continue to stay ahead of this injury and keep working through it and progressing with that. How about Doug Martin and Bobby Rainey? Obviously, Martin missed last week's game, and Rainey went off for a big stat line. But Doug Martin is practicing, and it sounds like he's going to play this week. Which back do you like more this week, and do they sort of hurt each other's value here?
I have no idea, to be honest. Rainey had 174 total yards last week. Martin had 9, he had 9 rushing yards in Week 1.
In Week 1, yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't looked good for a year plus. He's had the injuries. There were rumors that he was benched after Week 1, although Lovie Smith kind of went crazy when he heard about those rumors. So, I don't know. I mean, the new regime isn't really tied to Doug Martin, so maybe they give Rainey a bigger share of the workload. He certainly looks like he can handle it. He looks better than Martin has. The problem is we don't know until we see this Thursday. I don't think I would start either of them, to be honest. I mean, I think I might lean Martin, but I'd be careful. It's a short week. I kind of joked that there would be a lot of fantasy points scored because the Falcons, admittedly, the Falcons have given up the most fantasy points to running backs. But the Bucs might be the best cure, or Doug Martin. So who knows? But it's hard to see a trend after 2 weeks. But anyway, I don't know. What do you think?
I'd say Martin is the play here if you've got to choose a guy, like if you've handcuffed Rainey to Martin, but I don't feel great about it. I think he's maybe a low-end running back 2 this week just because of that really juicy matchup, but I could see both of these guys being flex-worthy just because the matchup is so terrible. I think we're going to see some split time here with Martin leading the touches very slightly. It could evolve next week where if Martin doesn't have a good performance here, it wouldn't surprise me if Rainey took the reins in that backfield.
He'll make it rain.
Yeah, he'll make it rain. I couldn't help it. It was right there. It was right there. I'm a sucker for a bad pun.
No, it was horrible puns are part of our show. That's just the fabric.
Yeah, it's interwoven into the fabric of our show. So
though, I mean, Rainey, you have to get him if he's available. I'm sure that he's probably been picked up in most leagues by now, but he's a guy to own, stash on your bench, see what happens with Martin. Definitely, if you have Doug Martin, you want to have Rainey if you can. So I'm not sure about starting him this week until we get more information.
Yeah. I think Martin's still the guy that you want long term, but I don't feel great about it. I think a lot's going to ride on the next couple of games and whether Martin can have one of those breakout performances. How about the Patriots backfield? We've got some news that Shane Vereen is battling.
Belichickery.
What's that?
Belichickery.
The Belichickery. It's chaos. Chaos in New England as usual.
He and Mike Shanahan have merged into one super villain of
Shanahan-checkery. I think Ridley's the guy you want to start this week. Generally, I think what we see is that in games where the Patriots are dominating and they have a fantastic matchup, Ridley's their guy that they just pound the opposing defense with, and he gets a lot more run when they're ahead than when they're behind. So I think this is a game where Ridley steps forward a little bit, as long as he doesn't fumble, and Vereen is the less featured back. Although I could see playing both of these guys against a weak Oakland defense. Do you like either of these guys this week? How about compared to the Tampa Bay running backs?
Well, Ridley is the guy to own this week. I think he's going to have a big week, which probably means that Brandon Bolden is going to score a couple touchdowns. Maybe they'll bring back Lawrence Maroney and mess with us. But I stole that from Twitter. Sorry, whoever tweeted me that. That was a good joke, and I stole it. So,
Corey Dillon's going to make an appearance?
Yes. I think that Ridley's a good play. I think he's we'll talk about daily fantasy later, but I think he's a great play in daily fantasy. He's a good price. Shane Vereen's got a little dinged up. He's got the shoulder injury. He was limited today, according to some reports, which gives more credence to Shane Vereen disappointing us all this weekend. So I think that if you're going to start somebody, it's going to be. Did I say? I messed up that joke. I meant Stephen Ridley disappointing us this weekend.
It's okay.
You didn't react.
Bad puns and bad jokes.
Anyway,
that's what the 9 route is all about. Well, let's dive into some of these injuries. We've got RG3 has it's a dislocated ankle. Sounds like he's going to miss a significant amount of time.
Ouch.
There's people saying that he may not start for the Skins again this year because of Kirk Cousins. Are you excited about Kirk Cousins, or are you kind of like, slow your roll, people, RG3 will be back soon enough?
Well, it helps that you're playing against the Jaguars when you have to come in as about who have prepared for one quarterback, and you're a pretty decent quarterback yourself. So I'm a little bit hesitant to see to crown Kirk Cousins a top 10 quarterback going forward. There's a chance that RG3 will be back in a month or so because he didn't break his ankle, he just dislocated it. We were waiting for that news. So I'm not as high on Cousins as some people are. I think this week he has a pretty good week. I think you're higher on him than I am. We'll talk about that later. But he's a good pickup if you need a quarterback. But there's so many good quarterbacks that are probably available that I think they're pretty comparable. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, you mentioned the ranking. We could dive into that just a little bit right now. I've got him at QB 11 this week. You've got him at QB 20. I think Cousins isn't great, but he's a good matchup play. I think he's a guy that I would consistently have in sort of like that 11 to 14 range, ahead of other sort of like quarterbacks that have been around a while who have bad matchups. That's kind of where I would slot him in, and that's kind of where I have him this week at QB 11.
After our initial check, I moved him up a little bit. Looking at my rankings again, he's up at 16 for me. Just behind Tom Brady, just ahead of Ryan Tannehill and Ben Roethlisberger. I think between 12 and 20 is kind of negligible when you're doing your rankings. That's a matter of a few points. So, I think he's going to be fine. I think he's a viable guy you could start who could have a big game. He is playing the Eagles, which is a pretty good matchup for him. So we'll see. Maybe Deshaun Jackson in a revenge game goes off for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I'm a little wary of him with a week to prepare for that Philly defense.
Yeah, and speaking of Deshaun Jackson and multiple touchdowns and grudge matches, I figured out our pattern here in the podcast. Whenever I mock some prediction that you have, it becomes deadly accurate. So listeners, pay very close attention. If I mock one of Alex's predictions, it's certain.
What did you mock last week? I don't even remember.
So last week I mocked the fact that we were even bringing up kickers at all, and you were all like, Dan Carpenter in a grudge match against his old team, and he ended up kicking like 5 field goals.
Yes, he did. See?
And then the week before that, it was Matthew Stafford. I was like, he can't run. He's like a waiter delivering water. And then sure enough.
You should mock me more often so I can be right more often.
Yes, I'll be sure to mock you.
Everything I say.
Yep, you got it, man. I'm here for you. How about the Ryan Matthews injury? We've got Donald Brown slotting into that Ryan Matthews role. Is Donald Brown a guy you're rushing out to get?
Yeah, I like him a lot. If you need a plug-and-play running back for the next few weeks, which you might with all the injuries that we've had over the past couple weeks, he's a great option. I think that the Chargers are going to pretty much slot him into Ryan Matthews' role. They're going to keep Danny Woodhead the same, and he's going to get a lot of touches. So I would definitely go out and get him if he's available, and I would start him this weekend.
Yeah, I think he's a reasonable start, but I don't like him as a starter as much as I like Niall Davis. Not Niles
Everybody
Davis.
loves Niall Davis.
Niall Davis. I'm a little higher on you, higher on him in my rankings than you are this week. I've got him at running back 8. I'm crazy. You got him at 19, which is still great. Tell me why you're a little cooler on Niall Davis here.
Well, for starters, they're on the road. They're not at home. I think last weekend the Chiefs were playing the clock. They were trying to grind it out. I think that was their game plan all along. They ran Niall Davis a lot to kind of keep the ball out, try to keep the ball out of Peyton Manning's hands, and it worked for the for a good bit of the game. I don't think they're going to run as much this week. They're also facing a tougher run defense. I think the Dolphins have a tougher run defense. So I'm not. I mean, running back 20, that's startable. I think that he's a good second running back option this week. I think you have to put him in your lineup if you grabbed him, unless you are stacked and you just wanted to block somebody. But definitely startable. Not a guy I love as a top 10 option this week, but I think that for the next, until Jamal Charles comes back, whenever that is, he's going to be probably top 15 overall.
Yeah, and it sounds like Charles has a high ankle sprain, which, rough estimate there is maybe like 3 to 5 weeks out. It wouldn't surprise me if Niall Davis is a starter for you for the next month if you've got him. And I think that's
a high ankle sprain could be 6 weeks.
Yeah, so Charles may be gone for a while. We'll have to see about that. And speaking of the Chiefs matching up against the Dolphins this week, on the other side of the ball, Knowshon Moreno is out, and it's Miller time. What do you think about Miller this week, as well as maybe Damian Williams filling in here with Knowshon Moreno out? Are you looking for these guys to have a good fantasy day?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Miller, I'm trying to find where I have him ranked right now, and I think I have running back. I can't find him, but yeah, no, I think he's going forward. Until Knowshon Moreno comes back, Miller's probably going to be a top 20 guy. He's looked pretty good the first couple weeks. He didn't really do that much last week, but none of the Dolphins' offense really did. So, he's involved in the passing game. He's going to catch a few passes. I mean, I would definitely count on him as long as Moreno is out. I think that Damian Williams is going to be interesting, maybe more for daily fantasy if you want to take a flyer on a really cheap guy who might get some extra, 10 or 12 touches depending on the game situation. But I wouldn't really go out and grab him in redraft leagues.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I've got Miller just outside my top 20. I'm still a little gun-shy to put him in my top 20 because even when he seems to get a lot of the workload, I see some good things, but not enough to get like super psyched about him and put him in my top 20. But I think Knowshon has a dislocated elbow. It sounds like he's going to be out about a month. Yep. So I think is that what you're hearing?
I think he'll be out a month, maybe a little less. But the Dolphins also have one of the first buys. I think they have a week 4 bye, so that might help as well. So it's a tempered Miller because of that as well. If you're trying to mull a trade or something like that, he's not going to be playing next week. So, you lose a week of like running back 1 status on the depth chart.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think Moreno will reclaim that number 1 starting role when he comes back. He looked really good when he was healthy. Let's talk about Eric Decker. It's sounding like maybe Decker's going to play this week. And I was kind of low on Geno Smith earlier in the week when it sounded like maybe Decker wouldn't play. But now that Decker is sounding a little more positive, how do you feel about Decker and Geno Smith this week?
I have Geno Smith as my 10th best quarterback this week.
Because he can run.
And my 10th best running back, because why not? I was high on him last week. I think he got about where I had him. I had him ranked about 14th. I don't remember his ranking off the top of my head, but he did pretty well. He was that stupid timeout fiasco away from having a great day. So
yep.
It was. I think that at home against Chicago, I think he's going to have another good day. Maybe get another rushing touchdown, although you can't really count on those. But he's good with his legs. Having Decker will definitely help. If he didn't have Decker, I'd probably knock him down a few spots at least. But it looked like he was pretty good even after Decker went out last week. He threw that touchdown pass to Jeremy Curley. It was a great pass. And I think I like him this week as the 10th best quarterback and running back.
That's 10th best. He'd probably be at least the 10th best running back.
He'll be the 10th best kicker, that's for sure.
Definitely, yes. If you can get him in FanDuel as your kicker, you're in good shape. Yeah, I was a little low initially on Geno Smith, but I'd probably put him in my top 15 now. That matchup against Chicago is really good, and he's not going to be the most pretty, thing to watch. But at the end of the day, the fantasy numbers are going to be there. So don't let the regular NFL performance sort of dissuade you. He's a guy who puts up.
They're like a mash unit again this year. So I think that they looked great last week. They had Kyle Fuller had a couple of interceptions against Colin Kaepernick, but I think that on defense they might have a little trouble.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about some of the notable performances from Week 2. There were a few guys that we were excited about or talked about on last week's show, and Justin Hunter is a guy who's been getting a lot of buzz in the fantasy community since the preseason. He's a guy we're sort of still waiting to sort of break out. He did get more snaps last week, so I'm encouraged by that. Are you excited about Hunter, or are you starting to cool off on this guy since we haven't seen a ton out of him so far this season?
I'm excited about Hunter still. I think that I'm a little disappointed with his Week 2 performance against Dallas. I thought he was going to have a big week. I think a lot of people did. I think I had him 20th last week, which is not too high, but he still got targets. I think he got 6 targets. Unfortunately, he's catching something like 38% of his targets this season. Off the top of my head, but that's part of that is Jake. Well, a big part of that is Jake Locker. He's just not throwing catchable balls to him for some reason. He's throwing them all to Delaney Walker, who are perfect to him, but not to Hunter. Hunter actually, I think, leads the team in targets, or maybe second, or wide receiver. I think he leads the team. I think Walker leads the team overall, and so. I mean, I think it's a matter of time. They need to get in sync. The Locker and Hunter.
And it could be the depth of those targets could be impacting that. I mean, obviously, if Hunter's getting deeper targets, then they're going to be less accurate. But if your catch rates in the 30%, that's not good. That's not going to work out well. But they're trying to get him the ball. If they can connect a little bit better, maybe get that chemistry down, we could see a couple of breakout games from Hunter. The question is, are you going to be able to predict which game it is? So I'm kind of cooling off a little.
I'm going to play the one Jake Locker, Justin Hunter stack on daily fantasy every week until it hits. It's got to hit some point.
It's got to happen. It's got to happen. Just keep doing it. Keep doing it. I almost played that stack last week, and I'm glad that I didn't. It was.
You and I we could talk about this a little bit when we hit daily fantasy. Apparently, we have very different strategies with how we play daily fantasy. I like to have a million different lineups, and usually reserve my best one for the bigger money stuff. But you like to have one lineup.
Yeah, I played 45 contests on DraftKings last week, and I used one lineup for all of it. I know that's not great for diversification, and maybe I should have a cash game lineup and a GPP lineup, but whatever. Call me lazy. I get excited about this lineup and I lock it in. I go all in with that lineup.
All I know is my Aaron Rodgers to Jordy Nelson stack last week was spot on.
It worked out really well. Congratulations. You had a really good week in daily. It was a really good week for you. That was awesome. Yes. I went with the Manning Demaryius Thomas stack, which was not nearly as good. Not bad, but not nearly as good.
It's usually good, but yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about Allen Hurns. He, kind of started off strong in Week 1 for Jacksonville. He got dinged up at the end of this game in Week 2. He really wasn't doing a whole lot before he got injured. How do you view Allen Hurns here and the Jacksonville receivers?
Well, I think that Allen Hurns wins the Kevin Ogletree Award this year, where he had the big first week out of nowhere, and we'll never hear from him again. I mean, he's a rookie. I think he's, I think he might have a shot of, having a pretty good career. But from fantasy purposes, he's injured now. Allen Robinson's coming on. He's still got Marquise Lee. You still got Cecil Shorts coming back. So I think we might have heard the last of Allen Hurns, barring injury to other receivers for this season.
You could be right. I'm not quite as low on him there, but you could be right. I think he's probably the number 2 receiver in this offense when they're all healthy. That's a huge caveat. The number 2 behind Cecil Shorts, who's not a bastion of health there. But I think that the coach came out and said some things about his other about them, all the receivers, saying basically how terrible they were. And I think he's going to get more
positive
opportunities.
Reinforcement.
Yeah. As long as they're all terrible, I think Hurns is still
You're equally bad. You're all equally bad.
Yeah, exactly. Cecil Shorts is the only veteran there that I think is going to sort of stay at the top of that depth chart.
Just sitting on the sideline, injured.
Yeah. He's like the old grizzled veteran, making wisecracks to the rookies or something.
So I think he's only like his third year in the league. It's not like he's been here in the league forever.
No, but compared to the other three guys who are rookies,
Rookies.
Based on the number of injuries he's had, maybe he's got a lot of logged a lot of hours. How about Vernon Davis? He got banged up in this game. We thought that he was going to have a big game this past week. What do you think about Davis going forward?
Well, he wasn't practicing today because of that injury, so I'm a little concerned about him this week. Watch his status throughout the week. If you have him in a redraft league, have a backup plan. I don't know what time his game is, but off the top of my head, but I think that you just got to watch it. I think you stay away from him in daily formats this week. He's probably going to be too expensive. Might be gimpy. Might be a decoy even if he does play. So I'm a little concerned.
Yeah, he's in the Sunday 4:05 Eastern game. So the second round
so,
games on Sunday.
If he's going, this brings me to an excellent point. So
yes.
Brandon Marshall went crazy. He scored 3 touchdowns, even though everybody benched him because he was injured and nobody knew what was going on with his 8 o'clock game.
Yeah.
Don't let that fool you. It's like, you play Texas Hold'em, you get a 2-3 draw, you're supposed to fold that immediately. You never play a 2-3 draw, or even like a 2-10 draw. And then you find out that you have a full house after the river, and you're like, and then you start playing really bad hands after that because you think you're going to get lucky. That's what happened with Brandon Marshall. Don't let that happen to you. If a guy's injured going into Sunday, unless you have clear confirmation that he's going to play, it's probably safer to bench him in the evening games.
Yeah, so you're saying you don't get on tilt and think that injured players are going to miraculously have big games in the future. Yeah, I got very lucky and ranked Jeffrey really low at Fantasy Pros and ranked Brandon Marshall 10th in my receiver rankings, taking a gamble that he would play and Jeffrey wouldn't do anything. So that worked out okay for me. But yeah, it's a dangerous game with those late games. And Vernon Davis, the thing is, I'm not real high on Vernon Davis in general. I feel like he's very touchdown dependent in an offense that doesn't pass a lot. And so I don't get super psyched about him. I think he's going to be up and down from week to week based on whether he gets that touchdown. So I'm a little lower on him in general.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you, sir.
No. I'm just lower on him in general. I find myself, every week ranking him lower than everybody else.
Well, that's interesting. It's funny because before the season I talked about Zach Ertz a little bit, just tweeted about him, thinking like, hey, I like him, but I think he's going to be touchdown dependent. And so, and in an offense that is going to score a lot of points, but is going to have a lot of players that get a lot of fantasy points, and that's turned out not to be the case. He's been a pretty big part of that offense, scored a lot of fantasy points, and it's Vernon Davis, who it sounds like from your description that's what Vernon Davis does.
Yeah, no, and I think that has to do with the play counts, the passing counts. I mean, the Eagles are a very run-heavy team based on percentages, but they run so many plays that there's a ton more passing attempts for that team than there is for the Niners, who have some of the fewest passing attempts in the league. And so, with Bolden there and Crabtree there, I don't get real excited about Davis having a lot of opportunities unless he's scoring touchdowns. So that's why I generally have him lower. But there's a couple other guys that we disagree on in our rankings this week, and let's chat about some of those guys. We've got Toby Gerhart. I have been very frustrated with Toby Gerhart thus far this season, as I'm sure his fantasy owners have, screaming and gnashing of teeth. And I've got him at running back 27, and you're more hopeful. You're more hopeful. You've got him at running back 16 this week. What makes you hopeful that we'll see the Toby Gerhart that we thought we were going to see when we were ranking him higher in the preseason?
I have consulted the Oracle.
Oh.
He told me that Toby Gerhart would have a big week this week against. I don't know. I like
there is no spoon.
And she told
I
me
like the there is no spoon argument.
And that you would fall in love with Toby Gerhart one day, but no. My jokes get worse as it gets later. I'm sorry. I'm not cut out for this late night stuff.
We're on the West Coast. You don't have an excuse. There's people on the East
exactly.
Coast.
No, I mean, but
it's like 12:45 there.
We're gonna go to sleep after this. Gerhart, he plays the Colts, who have given up the 4th most fantasy points to running backs this week. Granted, much of that came last week when Darren Sproles shredded them, and he is definitely not Darren Sproles. But I think that the Jaguars are probably going to try to pound the rock at home. I think he might be a little bit healthier after that week 1 injury. So it's it's dependent on a touchdown. So if he doesn't score, he's going to go way lower. I think he might go for something like 80 yards and a touchdown this week, which would put him about there, I think.
Yeah, if he gets that touchdown, that would make a difference. I'm kind of staying away from Gerhardt for maybe a couple more weeks until I feel like he's more healthy. I want to see fully healthy Gerhardt. I feel like he's kind of playing on 70 or 80% out there with a team that seems a little bit out of sync. The receivers are hurt. I want this group to sort of get their act back together and maybe not be great, but at least be more competent than we saw them last week. What about Percy? Oh, go ahead.
If you drafted him, you kind of had to take him in the 4th or 5th round, and he's just been a total dud, and you can't get rid of him. And, I might start a guy like Bobby Rainey even this week, or Doug Martin in your case, if you really are down on him, on Gerhardt, and you just don't trust him. But, I think that he might have a good week against the Colts at home.
Yeah, it's a good matchup. It's definitely a good matchup. So yes, that is a great matchup. You have a wide receiver at number 1 this week that is a little surprising to me, and I want you to explain yourself. Basically, you're going out on a limb here with Percy Harvin.
Mock me.
No, I'm gonna mock. This is the one I mock, everybody. So Alex is gonna be totally right about this. You have Percy Harvin as your number 1 wide receiver this week. They're going up against the Denver Broncos in a Super Bowl grudge match, and Percy Harvin's your number 1 wide receiver. What do you see here that Harvin is going to go off against the Broncos?
I'm throwing my hat, my lucky number in with Harvin. No, this week it's a good matchup. It's a really good matchup. The Broncos, I think, they have Aqib Talib, they have Bradley Roby, but Percy Harvin is a guy that moves around a lot. He's going to be difficult to cover. They're going to use him on jet sweeps. Last week I think they got away from utilizing him as much as they should have against the Chargers. They're going to be at home, so all in all, I think it could be a shootout. I don't know how that defense is going to do against Manning on when they don't have a few weeks to prepare. So and last week they didn't look very good. Of course, they're better at home, but I just like Harvin, and I think it's more of a gut call that he's going to be the number 1 guy. But hey, I put Jordy Nelson as my number 1 guy last week as a gut call, and look how that worked out. So
that worked out great. That worked out great.
Yeah. So
we're gonna keep the streak alive. I'm gonna mock this pick, and then you're gonna be 3 for 3. This guy's gonna go off. He's gonna have 150 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's gonna be nuts. But I've got him as my wide receiver 15. I just again, it's kind of like the San Francisco offense for me, where they just don't have a ton of passing attempts, and I think their defense at home is gonna keep this close enough that they're not gonna have to go pass crazy. The Seahawks don't usually go pass crazy. They're just one of the least passingest teams in the league.
But Harvin is part of the whole rushing attack. I mean, if he runs 3 times for 40 yards, that's a huge bonus.
That's true. He does have that advantage, and he is a dynamic playmaker, and he is healthy right now, and it's a good matchup at home. So there are things going, in his favor. But mock, because I want to see you be right. How about Pierre Garçon? You are also much higher on him than I am. You see the Kirk Cousins, Pierre Garçon connection working out really well this week. You've got him at wide receiver 7. I've got him at wide receiver 20. I was not too enthralled with their lack of connection last week. What are you anticipating for Garçon this week?
Well, this is more about the matchup. I think that Garçon has a really good matchup. It really could be Deshaun Jackson that we're talking about here. It's kind of up in the air. Jackson's coming off that injury, but Garçon, he's got the Eagles secondary is not very good. I expect this to be a lot of throwing from Washington. So, and you're the one that has Cousins ranked higher than I do. So who's he going to throw to? Maybe Niles Paul.
Niles Paul,
baby. It's a only target. I think that Garçon's one of those guys that can take a pass for 80 yards on a screen on a touchdown. So I like him this week.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it is going to be a high-scoring game with a lot of passing. I just think it's going to be a little bit more evenly distributed. Deshaun Jackson, Niles Paul. I think Garçon, will have a good game, but not a crazy breakout game that we've been hoping to see for a while. Last one where we differ in our rankings. You are getting very excited about Jared Cook. He has been shown some, consistency the first couple of weeks with putting up a little bit of stats in a kind of a somewhat anemic offense there. Why do you have him as your tight end 7?
I think that I'm smelling something cooking here. It's the.
All right, The Rock.
Do you smell?
Do you smell what Jared Cook is cooking?
Jared Cook is cooking. I'm smelling it.
That's good. That's good. I see what you did there.
I'm smelling the annual Jared Cook tease game where he has the giant game where he 130 yards and a touchdown or two, and then disappears off the face of the earth. And granted, it's really easy for me to say that because the Cowboys have been awful against tight ends this year. So it's a really good matchup. I think that Delaney Walker went up for 142 and a touchdown last week. Could have had a second touchdown that he barely missed. He just kind of dove out of the end zone. And Cook is kind of a similar player. He just never really delivered on that potential. The third string quarterback might, I don't know what he's going to do, but he might look at him as his safety blanket this week. So, it's a bold call, but I think that we'll see Jared Cook go crazy this week.
Yeah, that's a bold call. It could be Lance Kendricks.
That's true. Yeah, but Cook does this once a year, so what better time to do that than against this terrible Cowboys defense?
Yeah, I think this is a good week to play Cook in your Eliminator Challenge, where you can only play one player for the whole season. This may be his matchup week, where Dallas just can't cover the tight end. Let's move into some of our day gaming stuff before we move on to Twitter questions. We've taken a quick glance at DraftKings and FanDuel, and we've got a couple of picks for you guys. Of guys we like their value this week. We've already kind of hinted it a little bit. Alex, let's talk about DraftKings first. Who do you see on DraftKings that you kind of enamored with this week based on their price?
Well, let me look at my document.
Sure. While I've got my document up here. While you're looking up your stuff, there's a small part of me that really wants to stack Matt Castle and Cordero Patterson this week. That's it, and kind of like use my.
If you diversified your lineups, you could totally do that.
Diversify, man, that's boring.
It's so much fun. You have like 12 lineups looking at big matrix.
That's one pairing that I'm considering as my stack guys. Another guy that I'm intrigued by is Mike Wallace in DraftKings is only 5,800. I've been pretty high on Mike Wallace. Last week I wasn't high on him in week 1 because of the matchup, but I like Mike Wallace a lot, and so I think 5,800 is a good price for Mike Wallace there. What do you think? Are you seeing any value over there that you're excited about?
I really like Russell Wilson this week. He's a really good value at 6,800 over at DraftKings. I think that's I have him I think in my top 7 or so at quarterback at home. He's been really good the first couple weeks in terms of fantasy, so it's a really good price. I'm surprised it's that low. And then stacking him with Percy Harvin, who's my number 1 receiver this week.
I see.
Who's also a good price, and I don't have the price in front of me, but I remember it being a pretty good price as well. Another guy that I like, for some reason, Tom Brady is pretty cheap. I mean, I know that he's kind of had a down first couple games, but he's at 6,900 over at DraftKings. So, if you're looking for somebody who has a good matchup, he's playing Oakland at home, so he could go for 303 touchdowns pretty easily, I think. We'll see. And then at running back, I really like D'Angelo Williams. We haven't really talked about this tonight, but he's practicing again. He's got a really good matchup. He's going up against. Is he going up against Pittsburgh? I think he's going up against Pittsburgh. It's a good matchup.
Yeah.
And he's only 3,500 over at DraftKings. I like him as well on FanDuel. He's 5,700 over there. And it might be Jonathan Stewart, but I think D'Angelo Williams is going to come back and take this and regain that starting gig. So he's a pretty good flyer at 3,500.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think he's going to come back, and I think he's going to be the starter. Speaking of guys who are going to be the starter this week, Donald Brown's only 3,500 over at DraftKings.
You got to take advantage of stuff like Matthews.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. I might have Donald Brown in just about all of my lineups, all one of my lineups. How about over at FanDuel? Are you seeing guys over at FanDuel that maybe have a sort of a different set of values that you're excited about? Aside from Percy Harvin, obviously, because he's your number 1 receiver.
I really like Kerry Robinson over there. I think, he's going to get the workload that Mark Ingram. Nobody's talking about this apparently, but Mark Ingram's out for the next few weeks. So Kerry Robinson,
hand injury, right?
Yeah, he's got the hand injury. I think he's going to be out for a month. So, and Kerry Robinson's going to probably take over that workload. I actually think that Pierre Thomas is going to blow up in the next few weeks. But Kerry Robinson could have a nice few weeks, and he's only 4,700 over at FanDuel. And Andrew Hawkins, Cleveland, he's I think 21st in PPR scoring without having scored a touchdown. He's 5,300 over at FanDuel.
Yeah, that could be a good value, especially if he can find the end zone this week.
I don't have a kicker for this week. I'm sorry.
No kicker? Mock. No, maybe it's Dan Carpenter again. Oh yeah, Zerline, that's your guy. Let's answer a couple of Twitter questions and then we'll wrap things up here. We've got a question from Brad. Brad, thank you for all your support. He's been very supportive to us on Twitter and asking questions. I really appreciate that, Brad. He's asking a question about Fab, and this may be too late for this to answer this question. We're going to answer it anyway, just in case his waivers process kind of late in the week here. He's asking, what percentage of Fab would you allocate for Knile Davis?
Well, let's approach this from a kind of a larger view. Like, you got a guy who's going to be starting for at least a few weeks, and he looked great last week. You're gonna immediately insert him into your lineup. It really depends on how much you need him, but I would have no qualms about you using 50 to 75% of your Fab for a guy who's gonna start in your lineup for a few weeks and looks that good. I mean, I think that especially if you got injuries and you need victories, there's no reason to not spend on a guy like that.
Yeah, and I think that we were chatting on the Football Guys internal email alias the other day about Fab, and one of the writers there, I think it was Adam, made a really good point that as the season goes on, your Fab becomes less valuable because the guys that you're buying, you'll only be able to use them for fewer weeks. So don't think of like 50% of your Fab today as being as helpful as 50% of your Fab 4 weeks from now. Those guys are just, you can't use them for as many weeks. So, again, Knile Davis, a guy like that where you're probably going to get starting caliber talent for a month, I would say is worth half your Fab, and that's no big deal. I have no problem.
And it's also really important. David Dodds talks about this all the time. It's really important to do well at the beginning of the season. If you don't, then what does it matter? If you have all your Fab, week 9 and you're 2-7, then you're hosed. So you got to be careful to not fall too far behind.
Yeah. Speaking of David Dodds, that is our not so surprise extra special guest next week. Be sure to tune in next Wednesday night. Double secret special guest with David Dodds. We're very excited about that. That he'll be joining us next week.
Yes, I'm really excited about having David Dodds. He's a great guy and a great mentor over at Football Guys. So check it out next week.
Yeah, exactly. Last question from our Twitter peeps. Jill is asking, is it worth hanging on to Kelvin Benjamin to start in the flex position, or would it be better to lean towards other options like Kerry Robinson or Delanie Walker, Colston, or Hunter? We talked about Walker and Hunter a little bit, and Kerry Robinson here. How do you feel about Benjamin and against these other players?
I like Benjamin. I think he's going to have up and down season. He had the nice touchdown in week 1. Didn't have a big game last week. So it depends on the league. If it's a PPR league, then Kerry Robinson loses value, I think. But if it's a standard league, I would immediately put Kerry Robinson in there because he's going to get probably 12, 14 touches in the next few weeks, at least for the next few weeks. I'm not sure that I love any of these options over Benjamin. Maybe actually Delanie Walker because he's getting a ton of targets. He got 14 last week. I don't expect him to get 14 every week, but I think that he's going to get 8 or 9, and he's in that sense he's more stable than even Marcus Colston, who had 0 points last week. So I would either probably go with Walker or Kerry Robinson, depending on scoring format.
Yeah, I think I would still stick with Benjamin. Again, he's going to be inconsistent, but I think by the end of the season he'll have the most points of all of these players. So he had an off week last week.
I'm talking about in the short term. So down the line. Obviously, once we get more information about how he's used and he stabilizes a bit, you stick him back in the lineup. But for now, in the next few weeks, I might go with one of these other guys.
Yeah, I think Benjamin's second half of his rookie year is going to be stronger than his first half. So I think that fits with what you're saying. Long term, if Jill is talking about whether to drop Benjamin or not, I think I would hang on to Benjamin. If it's more about who you start, then you could probably start one of these other guys and see a little bit more returns in the next few weeks. So, hit us with more questions before our next show next Wednesday. Use the hashtag 9route. The 9 is a digit, not spelled out for the hashtag. Alex, you got any closing advice for surviving the Week 3 impending injury-pocalypse or any articles you have coming out?
Stock up on water and non-perishable
goods.
Week 3. Hopefully this is a quiet week coming up. I mean, I'm just, my head was spinning over the past week, including all the injuries over the weekend. So hopefully it's a quieter week. We don't see as many injuries. If you want to check out any of my work, I did a film study on Delaney Walker actually this week over at Bleacher Report, and my weekly fantasy exchange came out on Football Guys today. So go check them out. You can find them on Twitter. I've posted them there, so check it out.
That's awesome. Thanks, Alex. And if you want to reach us on Twitter, you can find Alex at Alex Miglio, and you can find me at Austin NFL. Check out our website, the9route.com. The 9 is spelled out in the website. Go check that out. It'll kind of direct you to all the different social media that we are active on, and including Pinterest. I've got to get that page up and running once I figure out how to actually use Pinterest.
Must do Pinterest, yes.
So thank you for listening, and until next time, may your players stay healthy, may your sleepers wake up, and your Monday nights be filled with miraculous comebacks. Good night.
Good night.